I will be covering The Japanese Offering Vessel by Samuel Ives. The history. The earliest Japanese offering vessels were made in the Jomon period from 14,000 to 300 BC. The hunters and gatherers would basically gather wet clay and create this cord marked pattern, and they would mostly use it to store rice and other foods. And Jomon translates to cord marked in English, so that's why they are called Jomon. Widespread use. In ancient Japan, there were food gods such as Is and Inari, who was the goddess of rice. They believed that their own rice fields also had a protective spirit called a Shinto spirit, and a big part of this agriculture was the ceremonies and rituals they would do to Inari and their Shinto. And especially around planting and harvesting time, because that's when they would get all their food for the winter, and they would pray for protection and bountiful harvests. Cultural, social, and economic developments. The Japanese offering vessel played a huge role in culture, social, and economic developments for Japan. Cultural, it plays a huge role in religious significance and became use of offerings for Buddha and other gods, even Roman gods. It just paved a way for many of these religions to have this sort of offering place for their god. And it also helped with practices, and it just solidified this pot into the Japanese culture. Socially really the pot really bring everyone together for rituals and ceremonies. If they were praying to their rice fields or praying to that god for a bountiful harvest, they would all come together. Even the craftsmanship would be passed down, and it also showed a social hierarchy and status in the community depending on what your pot was made of, or even if you had a pot in general. Economically, with a higher demand of ritual pots in Japan, Japan economically grew because of this trade and craftsmanship. And once everyone started buying them and finding interest in these pots, the supply and demand grew tremendously. And I mean tremendously, because these things would help them constantly, and they would think it was either life or death with them. Perception. The Japanese offering pot has, like I said, influenced a lot of religions in East Asia, such as Buddhism, Taoist, and Confucianism. It gave them places to offer to their gods. It gives them places for ceremonial use to respect their ancestors. And for Western civilization, it really stuck with the Romans and Greeks. I mean, earlier Christianity, they would sacrifice goats, but I wouldn't necessarily say they would use a pot. But Romans and Greeks definitely would have pots, and they would throw their food into the fire, offer it, the leftover food that is, and offer it to their god in their mind. So I would say, and to our left here we have a Grecian urn from Greek. And these pots, they were big on pots as well, which I believe came from the influence of the Japanese offering pot. These are my references. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.